sales with data. So why do we even track data? Because it's boring as fuck. Do you ever have weeks or months where your numbers drop and you get frustrated and confused on why this is happening, or you don't know what to do to fix it? You're like, my numbers drop. It seems like I'm not making sales. What's going on? Or I don't know what happened. So that's a symptomatic issue of you not tracking your data, you're not monitoring your data, aka looking at it, or you don't understand your data properly. Because the thing with sales is that it's an interesting paradox because when you're on the sales call, it can be quite emotional, right? Especially in the coaching space because you're trying to get this person to an emotional state, right? So you're having emotional conversations like, oh, I'll be frustrated, my dad, I got to retire them, so on and so forth. But when you're problem solving your own sales, then you got to put emotions to the side. It's not like we're suppressing it because that'll just bottle up and just erupt like a volcano, but we're just putting it to the side. Cole Gordon said this that kind of stood out to me. What you're basically doing is you're putting the frustration or the emotions, putting it in a Tupperware, putting it in the fridge, and then you're just doing something else. That's essentially what it is because you cannot get emotional in sales or just most things in life. You cannot let emotions get in the way. And we're humans, yes, but when we're making decisions, analyzing, problem solve, as much as possible, we got to be objective about it. Okay? So, what does not get measured does not get improved. I remember when I was selling sales training for the last 2 years, and I'll ask salespeople about their data. And then most people just don't know their fucking data. And it's just mind boggling to me. Because I would ask them, hey, so how many sales calls, like, what's your show rate? They're like, I don't know. How many sales calls a week are you taking at the moment? It's like, I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? You know what I mean? So some people know the basic things like close rate and show rate, but when you ask them, okay, so how many sales a week? So they say, I'm struggling with think about objectives. Okay, how many sales a week are looking to think about objectives? They're like, I don't know. Okay, so what's your average commission per sale? Oh, it depends. Okay, so what's the average? Like they can't answer. I'm like, well, this makes sense that you're not getting the commissions that you're getting because it makes sense because you don't know. So, and it may not be your fault because maybe you just didn't know this. People didn't teach you this, but I'm here to the rescue. Okay. So, as an example, a lot of reps will role play overcoming partner objections because they hate that objection. Ah, that partner objection is so annoying. But in reality, maybe they only lose 2 sales a week from partner objections, and maybe they lose 8 sales a week from think about it objections. Then, dude, just fix the think about it objection instead of the partner because just forget about the partner. Just let it go like the 2 sales a week for now, and just focus on the 8 sales a week you could be getting because you can't do like all these things all at once. You know what I mean? Or if you're losing like 3 sales a week from think about it, but your show rate's 30%. Well, why are you doing that? Focus more on fixing your fucking show rate. And if you double your show rate from 30% to 60%, you double your commissions without even getting better at sales. So why not do that? And oftentimes fixing show rate is a lot. You can do it in a quicker time than fixing how to get better at think about objections because skill set takes time, right? So just get better at preventing and handling think about objections, for example, right? Just adding urgency in this case. So why not just do that? Or if you go to a coach or your sales manager or yourself and you just say, I'm not making enough sales, how will you solve the problem? Because, oh, I'm not making enough sales. I suck at sales. Okay, so how are you supposed to solve it? Because we don't fucking know, right? So why are you not making enough sales? What are you losing the most sales to? Are you losing this many sales, like 8 sales a week, to think about objections? Is your show rate shit? If so, what's the percentage? Is your calendar empty? Do you not have enough opportunities on your calendar? Are you only relying on one call closes and not getting deals through follow ups and upsells? Like, what is actually going on? And so, do not be a princess closer. Like most closers in the industry, and just complain about the problem. Oh, the marketing went to shit. I don't have enough calls on the calendar. I'm not hitting my targets. Don't be like that. Be solution oriented, not problem oriented. Okay, so identify the problem. What's the problem? I'm not making enough sales. Okay, set hypotheses on what the root cause of the problem could be based on your data. Okay, root causes, what's going on when I look at my data? Okay, I'm losing the most sales to think about objections. I'm losing the most sales to having low show rate. I'm losing the most sales to not upselling people. All right, perfect. There we go. Now, you said possible solutions you think might solve the problem. And the reason why I say might solve the problem because, well, we can't see the future, right? So the only thing we can do is set hypotheses. This is how people back in the day made inventions, right? Like light bulbs and shit. This is how people did it, you know? So, I mean, there's different ways to identify problems, which we'll go deeper in like other modules as well. But, okay, based on that, if I'm going to think about objections, that's probably because either my pitch is too long, I'm overwhelming them, or I'm letting them ramble too much on the sales call, so they have too much information to process, so they think about it, or I'm not adding enough urgency, either in cost of inaction, or I haven't helped them uncover the real problem. As an example, it could be any of those things. How long is my pitch? 10 minutes? Well, let me just get that down to 3 minutes. Let me just focus on the concise things. How we're going to solve these many problems, have them get the outcome they want. Let me just test this, pitch version 2. Let's test it on 20 to 30 sales calls, and let's see what happens. That's a hypothesis. We don't know if it's going to fix the problem. It's like, let's see how it goes. That's the frame you want to go. Because you don't want to be like, oh, this is going to solve the problem. Because when you have the expectations too high, what happens? Well, the best case scenario is that it meets the expectation, but usually what happens is you don't meet the expectation and you get disappointed. So you don't want that. So you want to be just calm, chilled back, all Gucci, and either start taking action on the possible solution right away, or if you're not sure, okay, then present that to someone who could help you and get feedback, right? Me, for example, it could be a sales manager, coach, whoever it may be, right? It doesn't have to be me, but someone who could solve the problem. And this, by the way, goes along with not just in sales and any problem that's going on in your life or professionally. Okay. And you take the action on the possible solution, or you took one thing at a time. Okay. And again, when it comes to tracking data, no sales rep likes to do admin. I get it. Me personally, I like to look at my spreadsheet more than I look at humans, weirdly enough. But for most people, I get it. So it takes just like 5 to 10 minutes at the end of your workday, right? And it's the biggest amount, like for the amount of time and effort you're putting in versus the ROI you're getting from this activity. It's just so good. So you just want to do this, right? And I'd also like force you to do this. So once you get in the habit of it, it'll feel weird not to track it and look at your data daily. Okay, and how you do that, you can mark it in your calendar. Let's say your work finishes at 6 p.m. Then at 6 p.m., set a calendar event for like 10 minutes, right? You can mark it free, and then you can hyperlink your data tracker link. So all you have to do is click on the event, and then the data link pops up, and then you track your data, right? So you have it there on your calendar. Now, how do we do this? So number one is, well, you want to have a tracker that you're tracking with. If you already have a tracker, that's great. I use my own tracker. It tracks, because most trackers don't track the data that I want to track in order to problem solve, like objections faced. Like how many objections am I losing to think about objections? Those things, most trackers don't have that, so I made my own tracker. And then I'll attach the tracker templates somewhere in the training. It's not the most prettiest one. It's not really user-friendly, sort of say, but it works, and I'll try to make it pretty as we go along, okay? And now, so you identify, based on tracker, the area of your overall sales process where you're losing the most amount of commissions to. Okay, so let's go to, for example, one of my trackers, or one of the months of my tracker. Okay, so let me just move this over here. So this was, I believe, January of 2023, and if we look at the data, right, let's kind of look at this data. This is the week's worth of data. Okay, so over here, let's see. So if you look at that, okay, what are the different stats? So objections, for example, let's kind of look at this. Okay, so I lost 13 this week to logistical money, meaning the people that wanted to do it, but they genuinely didn't have the money. Okay, and then I lost 9 to fear, right? Money, think about the partner. So in that case, I'm going like, yeah, like fear objection, I could get better at that. But why don't I just, number one, follow up with these 13 people so I can get a pipeline to get these people to get the money so they actually buy, right? So let me just focus on that. So that's why, like, I was losing the most amount of sales to logistical money objections because I was selling to a lot of broke salespeople. And so because of that, I'm like, okay, how can I create a process? So what I did was, okay, like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to check and close them. I'm going to get the financing. I'm going to help them. Okay, what else can we do here? I'm going to hold them accountable. So I focus more on that. Okay. So that's what I promised. Okay, objections, that makes sense. So I'm going to do that after the sales call. Now, when we look at our tracker also, I realized my show rate was not that good. It was 47%, right? So that's when I started like, if I just increase to maybe, I don't know if I can get it to like 80%, but let me just try to increase it, right? I want to get it to at least 65, 70. And that's what I did and got it to about 65 to 70%. You know what I mean? And also I realized, okay, so what else can we do here? I mean, that's pretty much it, right? Because, yeah, that's pretty much it. Cash collection, this could be better, right? So I'm going to get them more into the paid in full, things like that. So this is really how you do it, you know? And so this is how you problem solve your tracker. So I'm like, okay, so you identify the problem. Let's say, for example, show rate is shit, or let's say, for example, you're losing 5K a month from low show rate. How you calculate that is you can just calculate, right? Okay, so how many sales calls am I being showed up right now? If I get my show rate to this much, how many more sales calls could be showed up? And based on my close rate, I could get maybe like this many more sales, 10 more sales a month, okay? And based on that, what's my average commission per sale? Well, it's $500, okay? That means I'm losing 5K a month from low show rate. So okay, that's the problem. And then you said a hypothesis. Okay, if I start sending, for example, a personalized client case study video to that person before they show up to the call, then I think more people will show up. That's the hypothesis. We don't know if it's true or not, but that's the hypothesis. I think that's what's happening. Okay, and then you change one variable at a time in a given compartment of your sales. What do I mean by that? So you want to change one thing on your sales call. For example, once you're on the sales call, okay, I think I'm not going deeper into the problem, so let me just probe deeper into the problem. So that's the one thing you're going to change on the sales call. Now, you don't want to make more than one change at a time in that thing on the sales call. Because if you change, like, you probing into the problem and you're changing your pitch, we don't know what did what, right? Because you change two things at a time in that thing. But you can change one thing on another thing. For example, in your sales call confirmation process, those two things are kind of not related. Okay, it kind of affect, but not much, right? So you can change one thing on your sales call and one thing in your sales call confirmation process. For example, adding a personalized case study video homework email, for example. Okay, and you want to make a note on your tracker of the change that you made. For this time, for example, right? What I did was this. I made one change to one variable, which is on the sales call. What I started doing was, okay, I'm going to do this on the sales call. In this particular instance, what I was doing was, okay, I'm going to calculate, because I was selling sales training. I'm going to calculate how much commission this sales rep is losing out on. Okay, I'm going to do that activity, that exercise on the sales call, and I'm going to show how much the commission they're losing out on. I'm going to do that because before I wasn't doing it, right? And then based on that, you can track your data, right? Over here, I'm going to be like, you know what? I'm going to be more animated over the top during the sales call. Let's see what happens. So you want to make one change at a time. After that, okay, you want to stress test, meaning that you want to test the change through enough volume of leads. Typically, around 20 to 30 leads on a sales context. That's typically it, because 5 to 10 is usually not enough, and especially because when you make one change in the first 5 to 10, you're gonna not be good at it anyway. So around like 20 to 30 is when you get a hang of that thing, and second, it's usually enough volume of data typically. Okay? And then you want to track the data using a tracker, like I mentioned, and you want to monitor the data. And when you're looking at the data, you want to set emotions to the side, right? Tupperware. And objectively compare data from before making the change to after making the change. And the good thing about having a tracker and looking at numbers is that it automatically gets your brain into a logical and objective state. And that's a good thing, because if you don't look at the data, if your brain doesn't get into logical state, then you're going to be like, oh man, why do I suck at sales so much? You're questioning your entire existence, and you think about just like quitting life, right? Which is no bueno. After that, repeat steps 2 to 6, meaning that, okay, you go back to, okay, this happened, next hypothesis. I think if I do this, this will happen. And then you just repeat it. And once that metric is optimized, you move on to the next metric that's costing the most amount of money. So when I got my sale rate to about 65 to 70%, I'm like, okay, that's good enough. That's good enough. Let me work on the next thing. What's the next thing? Okay, upsells. Let me do this, right? Okay. Now, when do we want to kind of look at and track your data? So you want to track your data usually after like end of your workday. You want to, after your selling hours, block about 5 to 10 minutes in your calendar, just inputting the day's data into your calendar. The reason why you want to track your data daily is because when you try to do it at the end of the week, you have to, it just takes more time. Because you're like, what happened this day? Okay, this many account. Did that person show up? I'm not sure if they showed up. What objection did they give me? You forget, right? It's just not efficient. So you want to do it end of the day, and then you want to look at your data end of day, end of week. Okay, how did this week go? End of month, you want to look at your data, and a quarter, and the year. And you want to look at your data and then set a plan, and then you want to execute on that plan. And also, when you're looking at your data, don't get caught up in like the day to day. It's like, oh, today like this happened. Don't get too emotional, because let's take this week for an example. This day on a Monday, I made no sales, right? I made no sales. Tuesday, I also made no sales. But what happening was on the Wednesday, I made total sales. There we go. I made 3 sales on Wednesday. I collected about 20 grand, which my commission on that was like 2 point something, 2.7k, something like that, because I was an 11% commission if you count the contract value. You know what I mean? So I made like 2.7k that day, right? And then next day I made this, and then this day I made, how much did I make? Like 4.5k or 5k worth of commissions, right? So on and so forth. And so you don't want to get caught up in like this day. Oh, I don't make any sales for like this day, right? Obviously, if it's going on for like a given amount of considerable amount of time, then yes, start looking at what happened. But like a day-to-day basis, it doesn't tell the whole story. So stay calm, look at your data, but yeah, make sure you're tracking your data, and then let's get after it. Next training.